Welcome now, Joe Watkins, senior consultant with Causeway Strategies. Reverend Watkins worked as an aide to President George Herbert Walker Bush. Still with us are Bloomberg contributors Rick Davis and Jeannie Zaino. Joe, thank you so very much for being with us. Give us some insight from your perspective into this relationship between the Republican Party and African Americans. It's a complicated one. It's more nuanced than perhaps we realize.
Well, sure. I think Mr. Henderson made a number of true comments. Black people, of course, because Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, were loyal Republicans in the 1800s and early 1900s. And up until about the 1950s, blacks still voted in large number with the Republican Party. Of course, as blacks migrated to the northern cities in the 60s and 70s, more blacks voted with Democrats, especially when Martin Luther King's father, who was a Republican, got a call from John Kennedy when his son was in prison in 1960, and then decided to support John Kennedy in that campaign. That was probably the first campaign where a majority of African Americans voted Democrat. And of course, we know since then it's been in overwhelming numbers. So it's not unusual for African Americans to vote over 90% with the Democratic Party. And we certainly saw that in the last election cycle. May happen again in this one, although these kinds of speeches at the convention from credible people are likely to shave off a few percentage points and give President Trump not 8 or 9%, as he may have gotten last time, but maybe 10, 11, 12%, 13%, which is significant for him.
Yeah. Reverend, it's great to see you. I wanted to ask you just what you were talking about. They have made a concerted push the last couple days at this convention and certainly today to make a push that Donald Trump has been making for some time, that what he's done has been good for African Americans. They talk about unemployment, the Criminal Justice Act, which was certainly one of the highlights of his work, his investment in HBCUs. What do you think the Republican Party needs to do? We remember post-2012, that famous report where they said we need to reach out. And you just made the case that, they probably won't get where they want to be this election cycle. What can the Republican Party do to reach out and attract more African American support at this point, if not in this election cycle going forward?
Well, policy and certainly conversation and inclusion will have a lot to do with any large-scale change in terms of representation in the party and the support of more people of color in the party. You've got Tim Scott, who gave a great speech on Monday night, and that spoke, I think, to lots of Americans and certainly to a number of African Americans, because his experience in life is typical of the experience of many people of color in this country, and he's overcome a great deal to become a member of the United States Senate. And then he has led the fight on a lot of the right issues, including the George Floyd Act, which would bring about substantial and substantive police reform, which is something that needs to happen and would help avert some of the sad and difficult situations we see in some cities around the country. So you've got some examples of people of color who are credible, who are beginning to emerge in the party, but a lot more has to be done. African Americans are not likely to forget soon the comments that were made after the Charlottesville incident. And so the president was wise to make a comment after it happened, and then he made additional comments which kind of neutralized the initial comment that he had made. And so I think that people of color are not going to vote in large scale with President Trump, although you may see as many as 12, 13, 14, 15% of blacks. And if he gets that percentage, that's helpful.
Right.
Hey, Joe, this is Rick Davis out of Washington. Just picking up on this, I mean, even during your administration, there was a lot of work being done by people like Jack Kemp, who we talked about last night, leading the fight to try and reach out to the African American community with his enterprise zones. I mean, there always has seemed to be a good foothold in the Republican Party and the black community, but we've never been able to make any progress with it. Is that like a continuity over time? Obviously, you mentioned, reactions to things like the Charlottesville marches that set us back, certainly as a party in the last couple of years. But where along the path did we go wrong that we couldn't open up that dialogue with the African American community better?
Well, it's something that takes time, and it takes time, and then it takes leadership. If there are people of color who are elected to positions of power and influence, I mean, back in the 60s, you had Senator Ed Brooke, an African American who was elected to the United States Senate from the state of Massachusetts. That was significant for people of color. And if you had that kind of continued growth in the party, certainly among the leadership, if you had certainly more black Republican members of the House of Representatives supported to be elected, that is, to win. I was a candidate once for a congressional seat, but I clearly I got past the primary, but didn't get past the general election. If the Republicans could target people of color in districts and get them elected to office, that's certainly helpful. We've had some people, Will Hurd, Mia Love, we've had a number of people of color, Alan West, who've held House seats, but you need larger numbers of people of color, and you need some black U.S. senators, and you need some black governors as well, black chief executives, governors, as well as the many black mayors that you have. But to the degree that you see more people of color in positions of leadership having a chance to make statements on behalf of the party, then you'll see some change in the numbers.
Joe, it's always such a great privilege to have you with us. That is Joe Watkins, White House aide to President George Herbert Walker Bush. Thanks so much.